Morning. I started preparing this several weeks ago in a bit of a bubble of pessimism. It was midway through the federal election campaign, which was full of superficial conversations. Tony Abbott was doing well in the polls, talking strongly about stopping the votes. The weather was bad, and St Kilda had lost 3 of its last 4 matches. Particular rural issues don't exist in a vacuum. They're integrally linked to the 4 E's: environment, economy, employment and education. So I thought I should try to include them, but I can't do it all in 10 minutes. I wanted to say something about values, because as a nation of immigrants, I can't understand why we turn people away, or why we are intolerant of those who came before us. So I've got 3 key matters to comment on, and my photos, apart from one, are from my family album. I wanted to comment on forgotten families, consumption and the Indigenous aspirations. First, you should know, because the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare tells us, that rural people are not as healthy as their urban cousins. They say there is an 8% differential in morbidity. Now, I'm not sure if I feel 8% worse than you, but I do know about high levels of rural suicide, that farmers dealing with large animals get injured using machinery. Farmers dealing with large animals get injured using machinery results in accidents, and many rural people have risky behaviours. The 8% is more likely because we don't have the same access to healthcare as urban families. I want to make it clear that although there are many disadvantages in rural living, I find the advantages far outweigh the negatives. I live in a safe community close to extended family. We have high quality schooling. If I need to go to hospital, there are no waiting lists and I can have the doctor of my choice. The water and air is clean. I can find a free parking space close to work. There are lots of playgrounds and sporting activities, and the people I mix with are generally resilient and have common aspirations for the family's success. But I'm a fat cat and many people in the country are doing it very hard. To start, I wanted to reflect on some history. You may remember our longest serving Prime Minister, Robert Gordon Menzies. In a series of broadcasts in 1942, he made a speech that is now called The Forgotten People, referring to those members of the middle class not rich enough to have individual power, who were taken for granted by each political party in turn. Menzies spoke of different classes in society, and part of his speech said, "I believe that the real life of this nation is to be found in the homes of people who are nameless and unadvertised, and who, whatever their individual religious conviction or dogma, see in their children their greatest contribution to the immortality of their race. The home is the foundation of sanity and sobriety. It is the indispensable condition of continuity. Its health determines the health of society as a whole." Now, unfortunately, Menzies also supported the White Australia policy. He had a paternalistic vision for the nation where women needed to stay at home, and he retired before the referendum on Aboriginal inclusion. It makes me wonder what he would think of the burqa. To move to the other side of politics, prior to the 2007 election, opposition leader Kevin Rudd paraphrased Menzies and said, "John Howard was in grave danger of creating a new generation of forgotten people." Mr Rudd described struggling working families as the new forgotten people. So will last week's federal election and the Victorian election in November result in policies and programs that build stronger rural families, assist struggling rural communities and lead in the areas of climate change, the broader environment, water, Indigenous mental and oral health, homelessness and create a prosperity that is inclusive and resilient? And I still have hope. Will the governments create a future vision that embraces a fair go for all, sets our place in the world, sets other core values we can identify with, or will we continue to grow the forgotten people, where division, blame and intolerance are consequences? We continue to waste money on building capacity for acute hospital care when we don't address the demand side, which is putting more money into health prevention strategies that keep people well and in their own homes. We don't do enough early on to support those forgotten families, where sometimes the children end up in the frightening child protection system. And we still have families sleeping in cars or in old caravans with children exposed to violence and drugs. I had an Aboriginal boss who used to tell me he didn't care whether people were black, white or brindle when we spoke about services. So I've chosen a photo of black, white and green being together and having fun. My young daughter is taught the values of respect and compassion at her school, but I worry that these values are now becoming optional in our society. I wanted to promote the idea of addressing the worst first. In rural areas in particular, governments need to establish a baseline and lift communities, individuals and the forgotten families to that baseline. To do that, they need a rural policy platform. No government in Australia has a rural policy. They have a range of plans and strategies, but there is no whole of government policy that brings the 4 E's together for rural communities. Over the next week or so, both Federal Labor and the Coalition will move rural issues to the top of their agendas, and rurality will probably dominate media reporting. I just hope change in policy doesn't include us all having to wear big white hats. This is a photo taken several years ago of Lake Maggie. I live in Maffra, and this is the source of our reticulated water. Several months after this photo was taken, we had 8 inches of rain. The lake filled and overflowed, and we had significant flooding. This was on top of 10 years of drought, other floods, and waves of wildfires in Gippsland that destroyed some lives and many livelihoods. Gippsland people are a stoic lot, but they complain when they're on water restrictions and water from the Thompson River is piped to Melbourne. They complained about being forgotten by the Kennett government and helped to bring him down by electing an independent in East Gippsland. Whether you're a climate sceptic or not, we have a universal problem with consumption and congestion. We can't supply the services and infrastructure for the people we've already got. We price the forgotten families out of the market or prevent access to reasonable and healthy lifestyles. We plunder our environment to maintain our living standards, but we still have an inequality of rural services and the number of forgotten families grows. Gippslanders get hit with cumulative stress from extreme weather events, but underpinning their strengths and challenges is an inequality in inclusion in the resources we already have. Now, I don't support Dick Smith in wanting to pull up the drawbridge, but in saying we are the clever country, we need to innovate and support the central plank in human progress, which is a free transfer of people and ideas and a collective agreement on the kind of society we want in the future. It's not a simple conversation, but in framing the future for rural communities, we need to address consumption, and in doing so we need to decide if we want current or higher levels. This decision will lead us to making the choice of growing the tax base through innovation, increased taxes or more taxpayers, and how much we wish to take on powerful interest groups. Lastly, I wanted to make a few comments about relationships with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, because we will not have a healthy future unless we are reconciled and we work together. I was proud to listen to Kevin Rudd deliver the government's apology to the stolen generation. The apology also looked forward because he promised a renewed and united effort to close the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians in life expectancy, educational achievement and economic opportunity. You might remember that Rudd promised a War Cabinet-style commission working with the Leader of the Opposition to close the gap and address housing needs, but this dream of bilateral support seems already to have floundered. In framing the future, I think 2 local projects in Gippsland show the promise of closing the gap. 3 years ago, I received a phone call from the Department of Education saying, "John, there are 34 Aboriginal 4-year-old kids in Bairnsdale not attending kindergarten. What can we do about it?" And through an enormous amount of work and partnerships, we opened a new community kinder at the neighbourhood house. This year there were 26 Piri kids attending kinder, and I know that their life trajectory will change. As a result of this success, Bairnsdale was nominated as the site for one of 2 Victorian Aboriginal Child and Family Centres. It has a budget of over $8 million and will commence early next year. It's a partnership between the local shire, 2 community service agencies and the Bairnsdale Aboriginal Cooperative. It will be governed by the cooperative and will have childcare, kindergarten, maternal and child health, playgroups, toy libraries, education and meeting spaces. It will not be one large new building. It will have multiple buildings and some different sites, because that's actually what the community wanted. These are achievements that will grow because of partnerships, strong relationships, community involvement and government will. I guess I have a dream that through a solid start in life, these Koori children will have much easier transitions in their development and education and move through to employment or university. In 10 years, who knows the number of successes we will have. I do know that the key thing we have to avoid when working with Indigenous communities is making another apology in future years. And so, am I still melancholy about rural Victoria? I get frustrated with incremental change, but change is happening. And the recent election results will give our rural issues a big push along. Government needs to provide leadership and the community needs to make them listen. And rural communities are becoming better than that. I've spoken about government, and if I return to my history theme, don't forget that it was former US President Ronald Reagan who once said that the 9 most terrifying words in the English language were, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Thank you.